Very funny. That sounds good. Getting all the beep notifications from our different sources. It's great. Mm-hmm. I'm so good looking. All right, here we go. Awesemo, just trying out the little hot mic there, having a little fun, seeing if anybody's paying attention here. And we're ready for the NFL Live Before Lock, Monday Night Football. It's been 2 weeks since I've done an NFL show. Kyle, have they changed any of the rules? We can play all 6 Tampa Bay Buccaneers tonight, right?
I don't think so, but I will say people stopped scoring. We finally stopped scoring while you were gone. It was, it was only 1 week, but finally, maybe it's the weather, maybe it's the correction of the Vegas lines. We finally had some, 2019-esque scores. So you missed them. You left at the right time. You took the offense with you.
Yeah, and I've noticed that so I just have a little habit of entering all of I mostly play on DK because when we're live and doing these shows, it's hard to do multiple sites. But I've noticed they just keep pumping out the contest. So all of a sudden I look down and I've got double what I normally have in just because I keep joining all the little contests when they spawn. It's pretty crazy. It's pretty crazy without basketball, baseball, anything tying up the rest of the funds. I think we're going to see some pretty big contests here. Or a lot of heavy money coming in on these sub slates and different things. So it's been a good time here. It's been a good time. All right, Karl Marx, thank you. Who is our whack-a-mole play tonight? To borrow a phrase there, got to say that correctly. What do you got? What's our big news that we're worried about here tonight? Is there anything? The inactives came out, nobody popped. It was a couple of the defensive backs, a couple of the linemen, and then everybody else we knew was going to be out. So I didn't see anything that warranted any action. Did you have anything we were waiting on?
No, the big news is stuff that we already knew. We already knew Chris Godwin was going to be out. We already knew that Antonio Brown's still serving a suspension. He's 1 week away, but I'm excited to see what we get from him. So nothing there. Gronkowski will be a heavily used tight end again because O.J. Howard has been out since week 2, if I have that number correctly, or maybe it's since week 2. On the other side, nothing much either. Saquon Barkley's been out. Hello, if you just tuning into the NFL for the first time and you decide, I haven't watched NFL through 8 weeks, I'm going to start playing Showdown. You won't be playing Saquon Barkley tonight, but no, there's nothing popped necessarily. Lots of kind of moving parts. I guess Devonta Freeman is recent. Again, it's not breaking news, but that's another recent one that we just have a lot of changing situations that aren't urgent as of the past hour, but we still need to focus on.
All right, so we'll jump in and chat. Don't worry, we're just going to collect everybody, and then we're going to race through this stuff, and we're going to go nonstop, and we're going to have time for questions. It is not a straightforward slate because we're going to talk a little bit more strategy today. And the one thing I do want to remind you is we have all season been doing the morning show on Mondays with Laffy as well as Matt Kajeski on there, and they've been breaking it down nicely. So you get kind of a more frenetic pace with our show, but you get to start to think about things when they talk about it. Tonight it's going to be a think about it slate because we sort of hinted at the Giants are just an absolute disaster literally at every position. So it's a mess. But quickly, I was talking with Kyle before the hot mic in the green room, shall we say, where we've got a Monday to Thursday slate. So looking ahead on that one, I'm just making my lineup. So I wanted to point out, we've got questions with Aaron Jones He's got a calf injury. And Kyle was mentioning Jamal Williams came into contact with A.J. Dillon, which makes sense because they're the running backs. They have team position meetings and all of that. A.J. Dillon has COVID. So we got the watch out there for Williams and anybody else on the team, frankly. We've got no Kittle on Thursday. And then we have two, what I would say, defenses in good spots. Tonight's Tampa Bay, and then the Packers going against San Francisco. I think what was his injury?
I believe they said it was, I don't know if this is confirmed, but it's
he's out for 6 weeks.
Yeah, he's out for a while. It's believed to be re-aggravation potentially of that ankle injury, but it is an ankle injury. And he won't be playing anytime soon.
Yeah, so choose your quarterbacks wisely. You can roll with Brady tonight, or you can go with Rodgers. I don't even hate Mullins, because who's playing running back for San Francisco? I don't think they know. Tevin Coleman hurt again. Just putting that out there. All right. Tonight's slate brought to you by No House Advantage. Exactly that, No House Advantage. It's prop bets. We talk about it all the time, but this is a little bit of a twist. We're not going against the house. We're going against each other. Their format is you get 50 to 60 questions for whatever events or day slate they're putting on. You choose 5 of them, and then you rank them with your 5 confidence points, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then your score. If you are right, you get the points. If you are wrong, no points for you. But the nice thing is we play head-to-heads, 50-50s, and GPPs. Same formats that we're used to. It's called peer-to-peer. Same thing on DraftKings and DK. Beat your friends, not the house. No House Advantage. Promo code Awesemo will get you a $20 deposit match with your first deposit. We'll talk about them a little bit more because we have projections for their site, and we'll get to that in just a moment. We mentioned no real notable inactives, so let's get this party started. At the top, Tom Brady, year number 21. Did Belichick get out too early? We'll have to see. But Brady has 18 touchdowns, 4 interceptions so far. The best part of all this, the Buccaneers offensive line is protecting him. 8 sacks. That's it. Of his 4 touchdowns, 2 have been returned for pick sixes. Not quite, technically, yeah, he's actually on pace to come close to matching Jameis Winston, who had an all-time record 7 pick sixes last year. I went through the whole list on Pro Football Reference. I think there was a couple people that had 5, and all of a sudden you're back in the 60s where they were hardly throwing the ball at all. But like some of the years where you're like, oh, he always throws one, they had like 4. You're like, wait a second, Jameis had 7? So someone was asking in chat, can you play the defense against 5 other players? Yeah, when it was Jameis Winston. And you'd be happy because he'd throw an interception, you get a pick 6, and then he'd get the ball back. Win-win everywhere. What are we doing with Brady? He's coming in as the number 1 play. He's going to be probably on 85, 90% of the rosters. Let's hit that strategy right now. Is fading him... we have different levels. He can be our captain. He's very expensive. He can be our flex play, or he can be faded. I like him as the flex play. If I'm building one lineup, I think I'm putting him in as captain. What do you want to do with Mr. Brady?
Yeah, so he's a great play. Like he's been absolutely on fire. His team is favored by a lot, but that also means they have a high implied team total. I believe it was as of this morning, it was like a 29.25 implied team total. That is a lot of points, and they're probably going to get it on the back of at least a few Brady touchdowns. So not surprising, he should probably be in almost every lineup in some, like at least in my lineups, he will be in every single lineup or close to it in some capacity. Now, I do think in terms of if you're going into very large field tournaments, right now we have a quarter of the field playing him at captain. And if you look at our top showdown and single game plays tool, he comes in as actually slightly less likely than that to be the top scoring play. And that doesn't even adjust for his salary. When you weight it by his salary, it looks like people are overvaluing Tom Brady at captain. And it makes sense. He's played well. He's a quarterback. They score a lot of points. But your alternatives are quite, like, your opportunity costs are quite high. You've got, like, Leonard Fournette could be a workhorse back. Maybe he won't get all of the work, but he saw like 7 targets last week, and he's going to get like a double-digit carries, 5-6 targets for 6,200 before you like multiply by 1.5 on DK at least. That is a lot to give up at playing captain. Like Mike Evans and Scotty Miller both have a ton of upside. Even Daniel Jones, being the massive underdog with a low implied team total, is so much cheaper than Brady. It's really that price. When you adjust for his price, he's just a play at captain. I'll have a ton of him in the flex. I just think there are better alternatives adjusted for their price to be playing at captain specifically.
All right. So that's the Tom Brady conundrum here. So I think I'm working on my little optimal here. So the easy slam dunks are going to be Brady, Miller, Fournette, Shepard, and then I got $5,300 each here. It gets a little interesting. So fortunately, we're going to talk about some of these other players. You kind of hit on the Fournette. So Fournette last week finally healthy, 56% of the snaps. Ronald Jones got 43. Fournette season high 7 targets. Jones had 9 over the 3 games combined prior, or counting that one. So Jones just not involved in the passing game. No surprise, really wasn't last year. Sort of had a bit of a resurgence or luck on his side, or good things happened to him at the beginning of the season. He's been tailing off a little bit. Maybe he just got a little bit lucky with that amazing offensive line play. But for me, one of the rules I did set is that I said, if I have Fournette or Jones as captain, I'm bumping down their projections by 20% to have them in the flex. It won't keep them out of my flex. I'm okay if they're both the flex. I'm really not excited to have one as the captain and one as the flex, mainly because there's only so much rushing production to go around that I want to either get one or the other. It's kind of a binary decision for me. That's the first time I remember setting a rule kind of like that. Usually my rules involve don't play this many people or don't do this or that. But Fantasy Cruncher now has, you can create these groups, you put in a key player, and now you can do all sorts of little rules like increasing or decreasing somebody's projection just within that group if a certain designated player is key. So it's a lot of fun. Did you set any unique rules, or is there anything you want to point out there? Obviously, I always do, max 2 of total kickers in defense. I'm not going to be worried about the Giants defense tonight, but the other one I usually set is limiting the scrubs, like all the Giants not named, Gallman and Shepard and Slayton I only want one of. That includes Ingram, all the other receivers, all the other tight ends, Dion Lewis. And then I've got Tom Terrific is the name of one of my rules. If he's captain, I want 2 receivers. And then I have Danny Dimes. If he is captain, I have 1 with him, but I've bumped up a couple of the other players. So if I do get 2, it's okay. I just don't want to force the binary 1 or 2 rule, but at least 1.
Yeah, so with Tom Brady, it makes a ton of sense. I mean, he has 2 1-yard rushing sneak touchdowns, but outside of that happening again, I'd be like, if I'm not playing him captain and he does that once or twice, I will certainly be tilted. But outside of that happening, yeah, his only avenue for scoring comes through passing touchdowns, and he could absolutely dish it out to 1 to Mike Evans, 1 to 1 to Leonard Fournette, 1 to Scotty Miller. But in all likelihood, if he has a good game, you are getting a lot of one. I would say that's why I'm not so excited about him at captain, because if he has a good game, that probably means a big game from Scotty Miller. But 2, if he has a good game, that also means you probably at least at a minimum want to flex 1, if not multiple, of his guys. So even if you're playing Tom Brady in the flex, I would say you could probably say minimum 1 of his receivers if you're flexing him, either the receiver and captain or in the flex. And if you're playing him in captain, you probably almost certainly have to have, there's no way. I mean, sure, there's a way. It is very unlikely that he ends up being the optimal captain and he doesn't bring multiple receivers along with him in the flex, because if he only brings 1, maybe that happens because the game is so low scoring that a 14-point game is enough from Tom Brady. But in all likelihood, it means that he threw 1 touchdown to Evans and 1 touchdown to Miller or something else. So if you're playing him in captain, absolutely, I would say minimum 2 of his pass catchers in the flex. And Daniel Jones, you hinted at this, you probably don't need to do the same amount of run back stacking options with Daniel Jones, because he offers so much with his legs, multiple games over 50 yards. He has a game over 70. I mean, he's and I think he has a game at 90. He's a non-zero to get the 100-yard rushing bonus because he's so athletic. He's kind of like Mr. Trubisky in that way, where is he that talented as a quarterback? That seems unlikely at this point, but does he offer an incredible amount with his legs? Yeah, absolutely. I think maybe if you were playing in the largest tournaments, this is if you're building 150 for the largest tournaments, I would say an interesting rule you could set. I think I did this on another slate, and I forget which one it was, but an interesting rule to set, especially because Daniel Jones fits this perfectly, is defense versus your captain, because 1, it is a showdown slate, anything can happen, and that's possible. But if you give a small key boost to your defense, that will mean you will build a lot of unique lineups, and it actually happens on a fairly decent amount of slates. And Daniel Jones is perfect for this, because Daniel Jones runs more on average. At least he has this season. He rushes more when he faces top 10 pass rushes. When he's faced top 10 pass rushes, he's averaging over 50 yards per game. I think he's right around 40 or 44 this year. So he even does more as a runner when he gets pressured, simply because when you put pressure at the guy, he's going to run away. And that still doesn't prohibit the opposing defense from getting sacked. It just means that if instead of 10 to 15, on 25 to 30% of his dropbacks, he's getting pressured, you get a wide range of outcomes on any single dropback. Could be a sack, fumble, recovery for a touchdown, or it could be a 30-yard run. So I think that's probably one of the ways to get super unique, already getting like deep level strategy as you ask me, like, are you stacking? But that is, I guess that is like one of, I think, the ways to get really unique is to play like defense versus captain, or just defense versus quarterback in general.
All right. I see they've tweaked some of the over-unders. So yesterday, or even as of this morning for Tom Brady, you could get him at 1.5 touchdowns on DK Sportsbook. The over 1.5 touchdowns was plus 140. They've now tweaked that, and the over-under is now 2.5, and it's minus 140 on the under. So again, this is courtesy of Odds Shopper, the Awesemo website, adjacent website that we have developed that does looks across half a dozen different sports books, shows you the different lines you can get. I love it for player props. We have excellent in-game pages, has all the history. It's got some great charts, graphs, everything you need. I'll drop the link there into chat, but this just shows you some player props. It's kind of a fun one. I was thinking today, because we have Brady projected for, I think it was 3.24 touchdowns when I last looked. So it was really, really high. It might have been tweaked since then, but that was kind of an interesting one, and it felt like a gimme. Of course, as you mentioned, anything can happen. Weirdness often does. And there are a lot of ways the unders can fail. In-game injury, maybe it's the running back score, pass goes down, receiver goes down on the one, they run it in. So there's a lot of ways the unders are still in play. But I just found that to be a really good bet this morning. So I wanted to call that out and remind you guys that we do have this whole cool site called Odds Shopper. All right, let's hit the receivers. Chris Godwin out for at least this week, fractured left index finger. On the positive side, I said this will give his hamstring a chance to heal, right? It's been dealing with that. It's cost him a couple games. So sort of the silver lining, if you will. We've got Mike Evans, who has a grand total of 4 targets in his last 2 games. Oh my gosh, was he not playing? No, he was playing 76 and 85% of the snaps those games. His name is escaping me, but the Giants do have a shadow cornerback who probably will be looking at Evans. Does Evans feel like a trap to you? Trap meaning, is he going to be over-owned today? People going there, oh my God, Godwin's out. He gets all this usage when Godwin's out. He doesn't always go against a shadow cornerback. What do you want to do here with Mr. Evans?
Yeah, so Evans is really interesting because this year, like, he's just played like this very ancillary role, essentially. Whenever Chris Godwin is active, he's averaging 1.5 receptions for 12.8 yards. And that, I mean, I think he's buoyed that with a few touchdowns. Like, I know he had a 2-catch, 2-touchdown game. He was like a goal line back in that game. But with Godwin out of the lineup, 6.3 catches for 89 yards. Like, he actually gets involved in the offense. But those aren't monstrous numbers. Like 6.3 for 89 isn't anything to write home about. And I think, yeah, he'll probably be a bit over-owned at the captain spot. Not because I think he's a bad play. I think he's perfectly fine when Godwin's out. His numbers tick up a lot and make him actually look like a number 1 receiver. But we have running backs on this slate that we like. I think we have some potential leverage with a guy like Scotty Miller, who, like, we saw he led the team. I believe he was tied for the team high in targets, definitely led the team in air yards. He went over 100 yards, scored a touchdown last week. Like, he really does it all whenever they are without Chris Godwin. He just plays like this very heavily used outside downfield burner role. He's kind of like Deshaun Jackson almost in that way, or something of that nature. Actually, perfect example. He's like Darius Slayton. He basically plays the Darius Slayton of this team. So it's not that I don't like Evans. I think there are really good sneaky tournament plays at captain, and Tom Brady and Evans, as we talked about with Brady earlier, just don't fit that bill. They're going to be popular, and they deserve to be popular, but maybe not to the extent that we see them.
I see people are having some fun with the whacking comment. Very nice. I deservedly so. That was a lot of fun when I had the unfortunate turn of phrase there, but always laugh at my expense. Good time. It's okay. Speaking of laughing at my expense, I'm going to drop 10 $1 head-to-heads here on DK for the Showdown slate. So you guys jump in there and get them. It'll be a lot of fun. I also noticed that one Josh Engelman had some $1 head-to-heads posted. So I picked up one of those. I'm curious to see what he did. I did not listen to his videos today, but just a reminder that each week he does put out, or each Showdown slate, he does put out one FanDuel centric video and one DraftKings centric video that talk about where everything's coming in on his simulations. So he's pretty darn good there with the Excel. He's set up some Monte Carlo simulations, runs the game, I'm guessing 10 or 20,000 times, and sees what different things pop and what different things happen. So definitely check that out. Kyle, of course, is writing a free article every day or every Showdown slate, as am I. You can check those out. Those are always on the homepage. If they have fallen off the homepage because we put out so much darn content, you just got to click the little NFL articles tab. Boom, there it is, right there for you. You'll want to check that out. And then subscribe to the channel. We just crested over 40,000 subscribers today. Thank you to all of you. We appreciate that. Had a nice little push where we've picked up about 3,000 subscribers in the last month. So that is very, very cool. If you haven't joined the fun, please do. And you can also click that notification bell, let you know when we're going live with any of our shows, and they are coming fast and furious. All right, Gronk, Cameron Brate. There's an election tomorrow. Everybody, please vote. Kyle, tonight, will we see the Make America Brate Again on DFS Twitter?
I was trying to figure out where this is going. I was like, I could get the
vibe
that it was some sort of transition, but I was like, we feel like a long way out from talking about football. We brought it back quickly. No, I think it has been and will continue to be a surprising amount of Rob Gronkowski, because through 2 weeks, he essentially looked like completely dusted. I know Bruce Arians talked about specifically using him like as a blocker, which I get, like, he's big and athletic, or at least he was athletic, but that makes him a good pass catcher. And then said Bruce Arians was like, no, O.J. Howard's going to catch passes or whatever. I mean, since the O.J. Howard injury, though, that has just not been the case. And it's probably because they haven't really had a choice. He's played on at least 75% of the team's offensive snaps in every game since week 2, over that span, averaging 6.4 targets per game. He's getting a lot of volume. It really hasn't been I don't think we see very much Cameron Brate. And they actually have a very deep receiving core. It's not like they, early in the season, they were kind of nicked up. Tyler Johnson, like Justin Watson, they have guys who are worth considering, even though Chris Godwin is out. So I do think it's mostly Gronkowski. I really like him. I think I'll have to see if I can find the tweet, but I think Engelman's simulations really liked him at the flex on FanDuel too. I'll double check that to make sure I'm just making that up, but I do believe that is the case.
All right, I see everybody's getting excited. Happy 60th, EMac. Not quite. It is a milestone birthday coming up this spring, but it's not 60. All right, the defense here. So we kind of hit on Gronk. My key things was he's played 75% of the snaps in all but one game, and 80% in 4 of the last 5. He's just on the field a ton. New York has allowed multiple sacks in all but one game this year. They are the 4th worst in the league with 13 turnovers in those 6 outings. Buccaneers 3rd with 12 takeaways and 2nd with 25 sacks. They also have the number 2 rushing DVOA and the number 1 passing DVOA. Oh my God. They are an unheard of $7,200 on DK. I think it's fair. I'm not questioning it, but it feels fair tonight. I'm setting the over-under on sacks at 3.5. Which way would you like to lean on that?
Probably over. I think aren't they averaging 3.6 sacks per game? Daniel Jones is the least pocket awareness you've ever seen. So given their season-long averages adjusted up for an opponent, I'll take the over. I'm struggling with it because they are a great matchup. Not only are they a great defense, but they get this is really what you should be focusing on so much, is they get a great matchup versus essentially a bad quarterback. Like, most of the outcome of a game in terms of the offense is determined by the offense themselves relative to the defense, at least. And the Giants offense, not very good, but that price tag is incredibly difficult to swallow right now, given the bevy of opportunity cost that it leaves you with. Are you playing them over, am I playing them over Leonard Fournette, given the pass catching role we saw? Bruce Arians even talked about using him. I think he calls him oh my God, does he call him a nickelback? I actually think that's what
he did.
But it's their third down back. It's nickelback. It's their third down back is what they basically use.
I just got that. It's a band reference.
Yeah, I think I wonder if he actually like knows that that's what it's a reference to or not. But
no, because I didn't know. No way he knows.
But it's their third down back. He calls it whatever. It's a third down back, and we saw that last week with the 7 target game. I like if that's the role they're going to use Leonard Fournette in at 6,200, I will 10 times out of 10 choose to go with him over the defense. I think maybe defense is decent. Will go not incredibly high owned in tournaments, but I think they could still end up being over owned relative to their odds of hitting specifically at that price. I mean, defense, of course, they have access to touchdowns, but if they don't get a touchdown, if they don't get a touchdown and this game doesn't score like 25 points, they're drawing dead to be in the optimal lineup. And I think that's probably a solid fade when you really are banking on a defensive touchdown to happen or the game to have like a 30-point, final game total. So I think they have a lot of ways to fail at that price specifically, and that is probably a reason that I'm not going to have much of them.
All right, just seeing, we got to have something free today. Ooh, the Showdown single game top plays are free today. That's what you want to check out. That's one of the tools we have here at Awesemo. Reminder that you can get all of our Showdown content for just $3.95 a week. You get the NFL Express package. Basically, the easiest way to say it is the only two things you don't get access to are main slate, player projections, and ownership projections. You get everything else for $3.95 a week. That includes Slack. That includes the Awesemo Big Board. That includes player rankings and grades for every player, Showdown, main slate, etc. But it's not a bad way to dip your toe in the water here. Just $3.95 is the regular price. No promo code necessary on that one. Well worth it. If you're going to play, 10, 15, 20 bucks per of the 3 primetime Showdown slates, it's just like $1.30 per slate to pay for that. Well worth it. Well worth it. Definitely check that out. Let's see here. Let's go on to Danny Dimes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 touchdowns this season. That is 5 more than you and I have combined. Yikes. 7 interceptions. What is this? Week 3? No, he's played 7 games. This is horrible. Though you pointed out the rushing yards, 45 rushing yards in 4 of his games this season, including 74 and 92. The 92 we know all about last week because he tripped and fell. Unfortunately, did not get into the end zone, but you're right. He's relatively athletic, does have the ability to run. He has posted fewer than 190 passing yards in 4 games. Let's see. He has double-digit fantasy points in 2 games this year. It was the games where he had multiple touchdowns, which means he had 5 games with 1 total touchdown and 2 games with 4. Even if you go back through last year, I went and counted it. I think he had 4 games with more than 20 fantasy points. That's it. We're just remembering a couple big weeks here. There's been no consistency. There's been nothing exciting about it. That said, he is one of 2 starting quarterbacks in this game. I don't feel great about it, but I don't feel great about anybody else on the Giants.
Yeah, I think the thing that maybe I'll try and sell you on is he's like fairly cheap. Like when you look at his price versus Tom Brady, like Tom Brady is better, like a better raw fantasy point play, no doubt about it. But a 3,000 discount to get to a starting quarterback who has a lot of rushing upside. And you said it, it does come in such spurts. Like I think you said he had like 4 games over like 25 points or whatever. I think like 2 or 3 of those were over like 30.
Over 30, yeah. They're big numbers.
They're big gains. And then the droughts between them are quite brutal. And that's what his pricing looks to be based on, is those droughts between it at 9,200, not giving him, the captain bump yet. I think he's actually a really interesting play simply because of the rushing and because of the deep passing ability. And I don't love him as a talent, but I don't really care. So much can happen on an individual play. If we're going to see a starting quarterback with a lot, like one of the highest rushing upside, like on a single game basis in the entire league, like it's not quite like Kyler Murray or Lamar Jackson, but it's like second tier behind those guys. So 9,200, I think that price is just like pretty considerably low for him. I don't love the spot or anything, although like I said, like extra pressure could also help him just continue to run the ball more. We don't have him as particularly popular at captain. We have him well under like half the captain ownership as Tom Brady. At the ownership specifically, I actually like him more than Tom Brady. Not like if I had to choose one, just trying to build the most fantasy points in a lineup, sure, I'll take Tom Brady. But when a quarter of the field is playing a Tom Brady and a tenth of the field roughly is playing Daniel Jones at captain specifically, I actually do think like I'd prefer to be over the field on Daniel Jones. And you can also just like run like, I think 2v4 Daniel Jones lineups are interesting, like a Daniel Jones and a Darius Slayton versus just the entire onslaught of the Bucs guys that you want to play. And he helps you like not save money, but he's not cost prohibitive like a guy like Brady could be. So I actually like Jones.
We have a super chat here from The Game is Rigged. I don't know what WYT means. Brady, Fournette, Johnson, Miller, Shepard, ? Oh, what you think? There we go. Thank you. Come on, guys. You are joking about my age. There's no chance I know Twitter acronyms. I thought GFY was good for you for a while, so I want to point that out. Celia, I hope you're watching. Okay, so Brady, Fournette, Johnson, Miller, and Shepard. I believe 4 of those guys are on my DK cash lineup, so I like that core. No real issues there. We'll just jump right to receiver. If you are grading Slayton versus Shepard missed 4 games. I actually put him on the injured reserve. He had turf toe. He had a fun little article I read this morning. He was shocked that he was on the injury report. That was news to him. His toe is feeling better, apparently. But I'm giving him the edge over Darius Slayton by a little bit, 60-40, I think. How are you feeling about the two of them?
Yeah, I mean, we don't really have a great sample on these guys. I think Shepard has played, it's either 3 or 4 games, and then his second game of the year, he didn't even finish. And those games also, like in the middle, like we saw like Golden Tate games where he was there and he wasn't. So we don't have a great sample. We did see last week, though, that I believe it was 8 targets for Shepard versus 4 targets for Slayton. And right now, Slayton is still the more expensive guy. And not only is he more expensive, but he's also going to be more popular at captain. When I don't have a strong lean in places like this, I'd much rather just take both the salary and the ownership discount. So for me, it's Sterling Shepard. I don't think there's a huge difference between these guys. You could certainly argue, I guess, like how they play. There's obviously a major difference. Like they're basically the opposite players. But in terms of their overall fantasy production, like I don't think we have any strong reason because we don't have a good sample on these guys to say one versus the other. So I'll take the ownership discount and the overall price discount with Sterling Shepard and just bank on him being the guy who gets all of the dump offs. We saw him play that role last week. So I think Shepard is a slight lean, but I agree. It's 60-40, and I'm not going too heavy on like any of the pass catchers because I don't really believe in this Giants offense.
People are laughing at my good for you joke, calling me boomer. No, but not that. I'm Generation X, but at this point might as well be boomer. There we go. All right, the running backs. So I was trying to find something nice to say. I didn't. This is from Jordan in the premium chat. Is it okay to play both Tampa Bay running backs in cash? Yes, I absolutely think it is. My only rule I made was if either one is captain, I was less likely to have the other in the flex. I did that by dropping their projections by 20% within Fantasy Cruncher groups. That's helpful. I'm okay with putting both of them in. I was even on the Monday to Thursday slate looking at playing both of them tonight. The odds are the game script is probably going to be positive, or game flow is going to be positive for Tampa Bay. Means they're going to be able to run the ball a lot. They're just if they can get an easy win, get out of there, I'm sure that would be totally fine by them. They got Antonio Brown likely making his debut next week against the Saints. Much tougher game in conference. I think they would just be happy if they got to run the ball 35 times tonight and cruised on out of there. And that's the scary part with Brady, because you could see him having a nice game manager Brady game with 2 touchdowns and 198 yards and 0 rushing. That's your Brady risk. But playing both the running backs, I think, is fine. There is no third running back, basically. You're capturing all of the action there. Now to these, I tried to put it off. Now to the Giants running backs. Wayne Gallman, Dion Lewis. Let's see here. I said the Bucs are allowing a league best 3 yards per carry, or they're crushing opponents' rushing games. 66 rushing yards. Gallman, however you want to pronounce that, has rushed for 60 yards in his career twice, and he has more than 45 receiving yards once. Wow. Dion Lewis, do you realize this is his 8th year in the league? Does it feel like it's his 8th year?
It feels like I'd say like 5.
Yeah,
I feel like
he's not a spring chicken anymore. I do want to point out that he has played more snaps than any Giants running back, and he has a combined 119 yards and a touchdown this season. Did you know he has double-digit fantasy points in full PPR just once in his last 35 games?
That doesn't surprise me. I remember thinking...
I'm putting this out there because it's like, oh, well, I'll play him. He's going to be the change of pace guy. Yeah, he's had opportunities before. Really hasn't happened. And then when you get with Gallman, it's like, I don't want to completely dismiss Gallman, but the odds of 100 combined yards and a touchdown, 25%, maybe 20%. It's not going to be great.
Yeah. 20% even seems optimistic, but
like I think catches for 30 yards feels about right, but that's 8 points.
that's like so I think that's the thing that you should focus on if you're looking at polishing this turd. It's that he catches a lot of passes. Like when he's on the field, he's actually a guy who gets targets. Like when he has a snap share over 40%, I think it's happened like 8 times in his career because he's a career backup. He averages 5.4 targets in those games, and he's going to be on the field for not only over 40%, it could look something like 70 to 80% of the snaps. So I think you can lock him in for, let's call it between 4 and 6 or 7 targets. That's very good. And especially it makes sense because he's 5,200. He's going to get a large majority of the carries. I believe he saw 10 carries to Dion Lewis's 3 in their previous game. If Dion Lewis isn't going to be much of a factor, which like you said, this is a guy who really at this point, not even hardly a factor as a backup. Like I was stupid enough to think he might actually steal work from like Derrick Henry in Tennessee. Boy, was that wrong. So I don't think, Wayne Gallman is no Derrick Henry, but at this point, it doesn't seem to matter. It seems like no matter where Dion Lewis goes, he doesn't get a lot of work. So if we're going to see the bulk of the work on the Giants team go to Wayne Gallman, he's only 5,200. Of course, the matchup is terrible, but if they get behind, it doesn't seem like it will affect him very much because he can catch passes. And I think maybe the best part is that I'm looking at a lot of very, very Tampa Bay heavy lineups because Tampa Bay should be scoring a lot more points. He's cheap and he gives you access to a large market share of the overall offensive production. And especially if they're going to score touchdowns, he could be used in the red zone. I mean, any running back is going to get some looks in the red zone. So I think because I don't want to play many Giants, getting a large market share of their volume at a 5,200 cost is probably the way that I really want to go when I'm looking at Giants. You have to play one Giant. So I think he's actually a very solid play because of his price. Specifically, though, mostly in the flex. I don't have a ton of love for him, if any, really, at the captain spot, just because it would be so many standard deviations off of what we would expect to see from this game, just given how massive favorites Tampa Bay are for not only even for the Giants to hang in, let alone for Wayne Gallman to be able to actually run on a lead, which is ideally what you'd want from him. So not a ton of love in captain, but I actually think I will be almost certainly over the field on him at flex.
All right. That leaves the tight ends, the defense. Yeah, we don't need to talk about the defense. They're in play. New York is averaging 2.5 sacks per game, 1.1 takeaways per game. Tampa Bay, 8 sacks allowed. I think they have like 7 turnovers. They're pretty good. So Evan Ingram, second on the team with 44 targets, 26 receptions, and 223 yards. That's all I got. He's going to be on the field for 80% of the snaps. Caden Smith is going to be on the field for half of the snaps because they're running 2 tight ends because they need to protect Daniel Jones so he can sit back there and not throw touchdowns. So we have Caden Smith, despite playing all these snaps, 12 total targets. And then Levine Tolilolio will play 10 to 15% of the snaps in 2 tight end sets. He had 1 target back in week 1. There you go.
Wow.
Not excited by any of them. I think Ingram is a trap. The defense is just too good at this point. I think Ingram, Slayton, and Shepard are probably all interchangeable, but I would rather have the 2 wide receivers than Ingram because I think he's having to block too much. Just because the line is doing nothing to protect Danny Dimes.
I agree. We are aligned on this one. I agree. Evan Ingram kind of a trap. His volume, although he sees a lot of targets, he has target totals of 7, 8, 10, and 9. He hasn't topped 65 receiving yards. He hasn't topped 12.5 DraftKings points in a single game, either of those marks in a single game this year. He hasn't even topped, let me see, I have it here. He hasn't topped 15 DraftKings points in a game since week 3 of 2019. The problem is that guys who get low ADOT targets, they generally get like more of them, and that's what we've seen from Evan Ingram, but that doesn't even guarantee that he's catching 8 or 9 passes in a game, because even on low ADOT targets, Daniel Jones is still so inaccurate. So we haven't really seen a blow-up game, and I'm not sure if that is like really in his range of outcomes, at least close enough in his range of outcomes that I want to chase a blow-up game from Evan Ingram. It seems like more of the median outcome is that he catches 4 for 30 and doesn't score because no one on this Giants team scores. So although he is like slightly cheaper, he is reasonably cheaper than like Darius Slayton and Sterling Shepard. He saves you, what is this? He's 58, saves you, what is that, 800 off of Shepard? I'll pay the extra 800 because I think you're getting like more valuable targets. And even the same thing with Darius Slayton, maybe fewer targets, but still even more valuable at that. He's been doing most of the scoring for the team. If there's anyone on this Giants side that I'm totally fine passing on, I'm going to pass on Evan Ingram.
All right. Interestingly enough, it looks like a question came in on chat premium asking about the popularity of both Ronald Jones and Fournette. We're kind of projecting them to be essentially even, both in the captain and flex on DK. I'm leaning more towards Fournette. I believe you will be as well. It's like a 60-40 thing. And we could see I can't remember if it was your article, but someone mentioned our favorite phrase, the hot hand approach, which could happen as well. I believe both have decent games, which is why, again, I'm keep saying this. If I've got one of them in captain, I don't want the other one on my roster because that's going to be my differentiator between them. Looking at it right now, I've got 180 lineups in. I have Jones on 38% and Fournette 41%. That's 10% above the field in both. That's for my flex. And then for captain, I'm going with Jones at 12%. The field is 7 right now. I'm going with Fournette at 12%. The field is at 6. I am going under on Brady. I am at 12% for Brady. The field's at 24. I have 71% Brady in my flex spot. The field's at 60%. Obviously, our totals work together, so I have them on the same number of rosters. I'm just allocating mine differently. And then Daniel Jones, field is at 40% for him. I'm going 50. Ball's going to be in his hands on every play. That's your old man announcer analysis there. But it is true. So he's going to have opportunity because who's he going to give it to? Gallman, Lewis, Ingram? We've already shit on those guys. So I don't know what else to say. But that's kind of where we're rounding it. Let's talk a little bit about 5-1s. Matt and Lofty were talking about how it played out nicely last night, kind of for the 5-1s. Shaping up to be a similar game here tonight, at least on paper, until they kick off. And when we say 5-1s, that means that's the winning team. A 1-5 would be 1 Tampa Bay and 5 on the losing or the weaker team. So check that out. Sorry, I was reading a note. Damn it, Jordan. You could say that. Apparently they can't hear you, but I can. Let's see. Awesemo NFL Twitter just needs 15 more followers until we get to 8,000. That would be a real cool milestone, to getting 8,000 there the same day we got 40,000 subscribers here on YouTube. So subscribe here, subscribe there, have some fun. Talk about the 5-1 strategy.
The 5-1, well, it looks like we're looking at a 3-0. We are 3 followers away since Jordan updated us. 3 followers. Come on, guys. I won't talk until we get 3 more. I will talk. That is,
we're gonna hold you hostage virtually.
Yeah, that is the Alex strat. Alex would just hold the entire chat hostage until he gets what he wants. I will not do that. Yeah, I like 5-1. I think it is simply underutilized in the context of, especially in a game like this where one team is projected to score so many points and they have reasonable values. Like Leonard Fournette is not very expensive for a pass catching back. Like the only guy who I think is probably overrated is like Tyler Johnson's price actually shocked me. He was like a 2K guy a few weeks ago, and now I think he's like 4.8 or whatever. So outside of him, they have guys who get the ball a lot and aren't that expensive. Like Scotty Miller and Rob Gronkowski get the ball a lot. They're not that expensive. So if you're going to have one team doing all of the scoring, and that is like largely what it requires, but that could be the case. And I think people are just so hesitant to not play anyone or, not play anyone, play one guy essentially from one team because they think they can build these perfect balanced rosters of I'll pick the best guys on this team, the best guys on this team. It doesn't always play out that way. I just think it is underutilized relative to the odds that it hits. And it's hit a few times this year. Like you said, last night said it perfectly. It was, there's been at least one other spot. I think, was the Rams a 5-1 win as well? Maybe when they played Chicago. It's kind of a crappy game. But it's been I think it was like Goff, Reynolds, I don't know, like Cooper Kupp, and I'll just start naming other Gerald Everett. I'll just keep naming them until I get them all. No, I think that was a 5-1 game as well. And this game sets up perfectly for it. I just don't think it is going to be as popular as it has of the odds of it hitting. So yeah, I actually have a little bit of equity, and actually a decent amount of equity in 5-1 tonight because I don't think the Giants are going to be doing very much.
I want to loop back. Tyler Johnson, Justin Watson didn't really hit on them a ton. It's hard to know which one is they're both gonna benefit over their usual rule. I don't know that this is really a plug and play. I feel that one, Brady doesn't necessarily play favorites, more or less, but he's got 3 better options plus the running backs than those two. So we've seen him in the red zone. He doesn't play favorites. So I'd still rather have any of the other guys ahead of him. I am using Watson on my main lineup because I wanted the discount. The one thing I want to mention, I'm looking at, I've just got my lineup sorted. 10% of my lineups are, wow, that's a big number. 10% of my lineups are 47,000 or less, probably 48,000 or less. And it's easy. So here's one I'm just randomly crossing off silly ones. Like I've got Wayne Gallman as the captain on a couple here. As soon as you do
whatever you want.
As soon as you do that, pricing is out the window, right? Unless you set other rules. But I'm okay with this because look at Gallman. Let's just say he has a phenomenal game, somehow gets 70 combined yards, 2 touchdowns, and this ends up being a game where it's all the rest of the offense is spread out across the rest of Tampa Bay. So he actually ends up being like one of the best raw point scorers, even with 17 points or something like that. But then I've got Suck Up Fournette, Buccaneers defense, Scotty Miller, and Ronald Jones. Okay, that's totally fine. So Gallman gets lucks into a touchdown. Let's do it this way. Gallman lucks into a touchdown, catches 6 passes for 40 yards, and runs for another 30. But then I've got the entire onslaught going the other way. And I'm just going to assume that Tampa Bay run, and I'm going to get Ronald Jones and Fournette, the kicker, and the defense. If this turns out to be a sloppy game that's not fun, that could be a way where that lineup would work out. So you want to review some of these and say, how are they going to get there? Now, my lineup with the Giants defense at captain, probably going to delete that one just because do I really see it happening? No, but if they get a pick 6 on Brady and nobody else has 2 touchdowns tonight, all of a sudden that could be in play. So it's not impossible, but it's not likely either. Yes, we have a fun little giveaway on the regular Twitter. This is on the Awesemo _COM Twitter. $250. That'd be nice to have. The question, will Daniel Jones or Tom Brady have more passing yards tonight? If you are correct, you will be entered in a drawing to win that $250. What do you have to lose? Exactly nothing. Just go follow the rules. You got to follow us. You got to follow, Awesemo NFL, and then retweet and like your response to the tweet. It's got all the instructions right there. I will even put that into chat for you, but that's not a bad. Are we eligible for this? I vote we're eligible. I'm going to be crazy. So let's think about this little game theory. Everybody's going to want to pick Tom Brady, but what if it is Daniel Jones? What if Daniel Jones has one of his games, and they're few and far between, where he has more than 190 passing yards, and Tom Brady has the 190 passing yards because the Bucs run for 190 yards? It could happen. Now you've eliminated 80% of the field that went with Brady, and now you have a better chance in that drawing. I'm just saying. It's about analysis. It's not about the best plays. It's how the best plays all fit together with what the field's doing. That's what we teach you here at Awesemo. We've got is this an 8:20 start?
This is an 8:15, I believe. And speaking of numbers that begin with 8, we got over 8,000 subscribers or followers on Awesemo NFL. So thanks, guys.
Thank you. There we go. All right, I'm going to upload my lineup since I've already got them built. This this is one of those games where it's like throw a bunch of stuff against the wall and see if anything sticks, because a variety of things can happen tonight, more so than some of the other. Because this to me doesn't feel. How do I phrase this appropriately? I feel the yardage is reasonable to kind of figure out where it's going to go. I think the targets are reasonable to understand where they're going to go with both teams. I literally have no idea where the touchdowns are going to go. Now, touchdowns are random enough as is. I have no idea. I mean, the Giants' touchdowns are few and far between. They go to everybody. And Brady's going to take whatever he gets. He's more about the score. Yeah, he likes Gronk. Yay, who doesn't? He's in a Hall of Fame tight end in the red zone. Yeah, he reinvented the position. Of course, he likes him, but he'll take anybody else. Was it Watson or Jones or Johnson that has had what, like 8 catches, but 2 of them have gone for touchdowns or some crazy thing like that? It's like, yeah, Brady's just, and 2 of them are like red zone touchdowns, like 7-yard touchdowns or something. Weirdness is happening. That makes this a unique slate tonight. That's what makes it fun. And that's why this is a throw a bunch of crap against the wall, but have strategies in how you're doing it. I don't have a conviction play, I guess, is what I'm lacking tonight.
Yeah, you should definitely be throwing your crap against the wall in like an artful manner. Like it's like a special kind of painting. Like
Jackson Pollock of sort.
I couldn't riff Jackson Pollock, and I'm so disappointed. I was thinking of the splattered paint. I couldn't come up with it.
Yes. There you go.
Like a Jackson Pollock painting. But I mean, I think of Showdown slates a lot in that way, where like I'm not really too often thinking about like this player has a good matchup, or it's this, like the right guard is out, so I can't play a running back or whatever. It's more thinking about how to build, like, especially if you're playing in large field tournaments. Like I actually have a lot of single entry tonight, so I haven't had to focus on this as much, but I'm still focusing on it, is trying to find lineups that won't be duplicated, because if you win first, you don't want to like have the nut lineup and then really not make that much profit off of it. So finding lineups that are still good, like not making like just play all the 200 plays, and when they all hit, that's how you'll non-dupe. No, like still trying to find good ways. And I think one, you said it, like having a lot of lineups out there tonight that don't have a lot of the salary cap spent is like the easiest way. And you can still build good lineups doing that. And number 2 is just building like unique roster constructions. For me, it's a lot of 5-1. I especially think like another one I mentioned was just like playing Daniel Jones versus the Tampa Bay defense. This is just another way that I think people who are building their lineups are going to see that in it. Like obviously there is a certain amount of negative correlation on the whole there on the aggregate, but just because there is negative correlation on the aggregate doesn't mean in one single game that can't flip. Or even if there is a certain amount of negative correlation, you can't just find a middle between these two where like Daniel Jones doesn't have a great game, but you have to play a giant. And if he's like rushing and no one else is successful, that's absolutely a scenario where the Giants could still get crushed by the defense and you just need to play a giant. His rushing and 150 passing yards is enough. So I think, you kind of described a lot of my Showdown slates personally, where it's more about the higher level strategy, the rules I'm setting up, the unique ways I'm trying to build my rosters, as opposed to like trying to pick out the more random things of like, I think this matchup is good or whatnot. So
yeah. So let's see. I'm playing most of my contests have between 200 and 500 entries. So I don't have to worry as much about the duplication because it's lower dollars, better payout curve and all of that. So probably tonight, because I put out those head-to-heads and I've made some double ups and 3-mans and 50-50s and other head-to-heads. So probably about 20% of my lineup's my main lineup. The other 80% is I'm playing almost half of the contests I entered today are something that's called boosters on DK. So this is kind of a nice payout format because it pays out, in my opinion, better when you hit. I like it for sports that have variance. I like it for hockey. I like it for baseball. I like it tonight in particular I like it for NASCAR too. I like it tonight in particular for NFL because I don't know what's going to happen. I have no earthly idea what's going to happen. I'm probably spread too thin. I'm playing 200 lineups, but as I said, I got a nice core of it where I want it to be. And these are just kind of one-offs. I didn't set, 3 uniques and this, that, and the other. I'm playing every little iteration of something just to see if something hits. And I'm going to have enough that are like that. So the boosters, what they do is when you get the minimum payout, it's like 10x or 40x, whatever. It's like a quarter and you win $1 or $10. So I've got 200 lineups in that. And I'm just playing each one once, but my lineups are closely correlated is not the right word, but they're not diffused or dispersed, that if I hit on a couple of the key plays, I'm going to place in several of those. I don't need the top score. I just need to get in whatever it is. I think it's the top 1% or something like that. So that's a better way of doing it. Another thing I do, I really have enjoyed doing, is playing the quints, the quintuples, where it's 5x. It pays out 20% of the field and you get, or 18%, whatever it is, but you get 5 times your money. But you know, if you have an 85th percentile lineup, you get 5 times your money. If you have an 85th percentile lineup in a GPP, you get 50% back on your buy-in. Right. So you got to look at these payout structures. Yeah. So I play them just like they're a GPP. So I enter a bunch of them and then I just put in a bunch of lineups and I'm off to the races. Because I have found in tracking it, that is about the same payout that works out as opposed to these giant contests. Because how often do you get more than 5x in a contest, Kyle? It truly doesn't happen very much.
I can tell you, watching Mike Williams, not Randy Moss, that defender. I was live with some Mike Williams, and did you watch that game? He goes up for catch on a defender, and it would have been a difficult, sweet catch. I'm not saying like he's a bum or anything, but had he mossed this Denver defender, I wouldn't be doing this show. I'd be, like in Cuba or something.
All right, 4 minutes left. Best captain tonight.
So for me, like versus the field, like that's almost like the entirety of the context when I talk about things. Like technically the best captain is probably Tom Brady. The best captain versus the field for me is Leonard Fournette, because I think he could be both the 1A as a runner. I don't think he entirely crowds out Ronald Jones. I don't really see any scenario in which Ronald Jones doesn't get a handful of carries. But there's the upside that you talked about, like this being a hot hand scenario where Jones gets like, the first drive or the second drive, he fumbles. And then we see a lot of Leonard Fournette, and we already know he's going to be the pass catcher. So versus the field, I think his potential to score touchdowns on the ground and rack up catches through the air probably makes him, that's the reason I have him as my number one captain versus the field, at least.
All right. And I would agree with the same way. But again, I'm going half the captain as the field on Brady, but double on pretty much everybody else.
I like it.
Fournette, Jones, Shepard, and Slayton being the key guys. I'm matching them with Gronk, and I'm matching it with Evans because I don't know what the deal is. I don't like the fact that he's had the last 2 games, even though he's played 75% or more of the snaps, that he has 2 targets in each game. That doesn't feel good. Does Brady have a noodle arm? No. Are they going to need to go deep tonight? Probably not. Okay, so that kind of hurts him for these. All right, tomorrow, starting it off at 11, we got the NFL Strategy Show. You're going to get Laffy and Sal and Ben Rasa breaking down the slate. And then 2:30, it's a double dip. Ben Rasa and Tim Frank going over golf for the week. You definitely want to check that out. You can also get all of our shows, with the exception of Live Before Locks, on the Awesemo Podcast Network. Literally any podcast platform that you can think of, we are on there. We have the Awesemo main podcast channel that has all of the podcasts, and then we've broken out several of the sports, NBA, NFL, MLB, and golf all have their own channels. If you don't want to take up a bunch of storage, because we're running 4 or 5 shows a day, if you don't want to take up that kind of storage on your phone, you can pick your favorite sports and just say, hey, remember the last 3. And go from there. But I do like the NFL ones because I'll listen to those shows throughout the week because those are nice evergreen content. When's the waiver? Do we have a waiver show?
The waiver wire show?
Was that today?
Yeah, that was recorded today. I'm not sure. It's not live, so I can check the YouTube. If it's not out by like right now, it will be within the next, 24 hours. So yes, we do have the waiver wire show.
Because we've got waivers claims that will need to be processed tomorrow for our season-long leagues. But there we are. All right, that's going to do it. Any final thoughts before we get on out of here?
No, I guess we talked about it a lot. Let's get some Leonard Fournette. I don't even hate Ronald Jones. I talked really almost exclusively about Leonard Fournette, but I kind of agree that like just fading Brady, going with a lot of the other guys for me, both Jones and Fournette, more Fournette, but let's fade Brady. Let's get a modest. Let's just get the middle of the road. Brady goes out, does his work. He puts on his, gets his lunch pail, gets 190 yards and a touchdown, and we're very happy.
All right. With that, time for some pizza. We're going to get on out of here. You can follow Kyle at Kyle Tweets here on Twitter. I am at EMac DFS. And of course, it is Awesemo_COM. With that, gamers, good luck.